There wasn't any neural data connecting to tell her about her own self who was within the experience. And you can't necessarily observe the distinction between your automated sense of reality and what it might otherwise be. Because the neuroscience of these unique manifestations of dissociation are so beautifully divine and miraculously astounding. And when we can look at the neuroscience and honor the unique miracles that consciousness is divinely encountering, we expand personal power within any type of unique dissociative situation. And dissociation never reduces the miracle that we are, no matter what, no matter what, no matter what, abilities, etc. Baby Bunny's coming to join. Shh, don't tell anyone I have a baby bunny on my lap. I did not understand this before, but now I do, and that is a miracle. My 27th thesis statement is that dissociation is an umbrella term to describe hundreds of unique experiences that may stem from undercoupled neural wiring, independent activity within the neurobiological social engagement system, brain-body dysregulation, or other neurobiological particulars. All of this energetic wiring, though, may be traced back to past moments of unfulfilled attachment needs that directly impacted the style in which the brain-body system became wired and then continued navigating and regulating through unfolding moments of personal experience. Not being able to access certain periods of autobiographical information can also produce unique dissociative experiences. 1 year ago, I did not have access to memories about who I was or what I had experienced preceding 2017-2018. I could not instinctively understand who I was in relation to the first 25 years of my life, which profoundly affected my ability to navigate my sense of identity and experience. But I didn't have full awareness of that because you can't know what you don't know, basically. If the neural data isn't there, you can't necessarily get to a place where you have access to the awareness that you can't get to neural data. You can't know about what you don't know about. And so I didn't actually have conscious awareness that I didn't have access to neural data from the first 25 years of my life. I didn't have the ability to observe that element of my experience because my ability to navigate my sense of identity and experience comes from neural wiring. And that's the stuff I didn't have access to. So it created a wide variety of unique dissociative experiences. And even now, I'm still recovering memories every single day, which is such a neurobiological miracle. One of infinite personal examples was a unique season of life where Kristin in 2020 went for bike rides every day. Kristin had gone through this miraculous, long, excruciating, profoundly excruciating process through many, many months of intensive trauma work, like the gnarliest of shadow work you could possibly fathom, to summarize it. Kristin had gone through all of this work to help her mind and her body regain abilities for instinctive connections. Kristin's mind and body had been completely disconnected for many years and had always experienced some level of disconnection throughout her life because of how suppressed childhood trauma had impacted her brain-body activity. After Kristin completed this stage of her trauma recovery, or her great expansion of love, Kristin's mind and body were totally connected, and Kristin finally had an opportunity to be inside of her physical body within moments of experience. This was such a profound gift that all Kristin wanted to do was spend time in her body. She didn't want to do anything else. So she went for regular bike rides and was just astounded by the feeling of being connected to her own body. During this unique season of Kristin's miraculous unfoldings, she decided that she was going to bike on every street in every surrounding city, and spent several months dedicated to the task at hand. Every day, Kristin would load up her bike in a car and go drive to a new random street and just start bike riding and see where the days took her. It wasn't until many, many, many months later that I realized that I did not have access to memory data from the first 25 years of my life when I was riding that bike. So during that season, I was not Kristin riding a bike through a neighborhood. Instead, Kristin was a bike rider. There was no sense of self because there were no neural data connections to effectively navigate any sense of identity. Without any sense of a self, Kristin was not Kristin riding a bike. There was not a uniquely individualized person having a personal experience of bike riding. Instead, there was just a bike rider. There was just an experience of riding a bike, but there was no self who was within the experience of riding the bike. But Kristin didn't know about that at the time because there wasn't any neural data to explain what was happening. It wasn't until many months later that I realized I didn't have access to neural data from the first 25 years of my life. And then after many, many months of recovering all of that data and reconnecting all of it within itself and with updated information about who and where I am today, then I was able to look back at the experience of bike riding last year and recognize the unique dissociative properties of those experiences. The feeling of riding a bike today is very different from how riding a bike felt last year, because back then, Kristin was not Kristin riding a bike. There is so much unique dissociation and independent neural activity as the mind and the body learned how to speak to each other for the first time in a very long time, that all of those experiences held unique styles of dissociation. Kristin was not Kristin riding a bike. Kristin was experiencing herself as the experience of bike riding. There was no sense of self, so the experience was her sense of self. There was a bike rider riding a bike. There was not Kristin riding a bike. Without a sense of self, Kristin's ability to relate with who she was and how that sense of identity interacted with realities was profoundly impacted in many unique dissociative ways. Another example is when Kristin in 2020 wanted to publish her very own book. Writing was always a passion of mine. Little Kristin loved writing. Teenage Kristin loved writing. And even this known documentary series originally began by writing a 400+ page book of my memoirs. And so writing was always something that has been a deep, passionate desire throughout my entire life. And so in 2020, Kristin's like, I really want to write a book and have it be published for realsies, like a traditional publisher giving me a book contract and going through the process of having my own book published for real. And it was this deep passion and this profound dream and desire within her heart. During this season of life, though, Kristin did not have access to a solidified sense of self. She still didn't have access to any of the neural data from the first 25 years of her life. So the only neural data that was contributing to new moments was data gathered from the past few years of super intensive trauma recovery. And that was the only way that our unconscious body-mind was understanding how to navigate her sense of self and how that sense of self was navigating unfolding moments of personal experience and realities internally and externally. Because of this, there was not a Kristin who had an idea and could move through along the steps of the journey of writing and publishing a book. The neural data that would allow for that experience wasn't there because it wasn't connected. The data itself existed, but it had no connection, so it couldn't contribute to navigation instinctively. So Kristin was trying to go through this process of, how do you get a book? Well, you manifest it. Manifestation was something that Kristin had been exploring during her healing journey, and some of that was at the top forefront of neural data providing navigation through unfolding moments. But if navigation is stemming from neural data that talks about manifestation, without any neural data to tell you who you are, it can create some unique dissociative experiences. So Kristin decided she was going to manifest the book that she wanted to be published. And in the process, she did something very clever, which I really appreciate looking back on it. Kristin made a cover of what she wanted her published book to be. She wrote the book title, she wrote by Kristin, she made a book cover, and she placed the book cover over a book, a real life book. And so she looked at it, and there was a physical object that was a book with many, many pages, and it had a cover that showed the title and her name of this book she wanted to be published. And so she's standing at her desk, typing her book manuscript draft, and she continually glances from the computer screen to this book with her own makeshift book cover on it. And the navigation stemming from neural activity tells her that if she keeps looking at that book long enough, it will happen and it will just be there. She's going to manifest it. She's going to look at this book cover that she made on this book. And if she keeps looking at it long enough and believing that it's possible, then boom, her book will suddenly appear before her within physicality. And as wonderful and glorious as manifesting our dreams is, what was happening there was a unique dissociative experience. There was no neural data to explain to Kristin who she was or how that sense of self could navigate inner and outer realities to take steps towards her dreams. There wasn't any neural data to explain that. And so the few pieces of neural data that did have connections were created from recent months where she was doing a lot of research about manifesting your dreams. And so that neural data wasn't explaining, hey, you're Kristin, you've enjoyed writing your whole life, you have an idea, you work on your book manuscript, and then you go through this step, and you go through this step, and you look for an agent, and you look for a publisher, and you apply, and then once you hear from them, you work with them, and you go through an editing process. You know, there's all of this stuff that happens, right, along the journey of creating this dream. But there wasn't any neural data connecting to tell Kristin about that. So the neural data said, pretend it's there and it'll be there. And so Kristin kept glancing at this makeshift book cover while she was writing, because neural data explained that if she kept looking at it and believing hard enough, it would suddenly appear before her. Neural data helps us understand conceptualizations of time, sequentiality, linearity, and a variety of other components of the human experience that help us navigate our unfoldings. For example, how do you know the difference between 10 years ago, yesterday, tomorrow, and a potential 10 years into the future? Or can you instinctively understand that conceptualization of time and sequentiality? Our ability to remember things from the past and understand their relationship with other elements of life, both abstractly, externally, and specifically internally. And our ability to understand how that organization of information relates with who and where we are today, and how that organization and relationship contributes to the potentials of life's unfoldings. All of those complex pieces of knowledge depend on neural content and connectivity. And if the content and or connectivity is disrupted because of unfulfilled attachment needs, past or present, then it will impact how the unconscious body-mind instinctively understands how to navigate itself and elements of personal life. Kristin didn't have access to neural data that explained how her passion for writing had grown over the past few decades. There wasn't any neural data connecting to tell her about her own self, who was within the experience. And because those unfolding days didn't have contact with any past days, a year before, 10 years before, 20 years before, there was no neurobiological ability For Kristin to understand the potential of days, weeks, months, years to unfold. So there wasn't a neurobiological capacity to understand the linear sequentiality of step-by-step processes occurring through a process of time and space that might be required to actually publish a book. Neural data and brain-body activity was not allowing for that precision of navigation within identity or experience. And it resulted in unique styles of dissociation, where Kristin was continually typing and every few seconds was glancing over at this book, not even able to stay focused for long periods of time because the brain was so focused on make it appear, make it appear, make it appear. Is it there yet? Is it there now? I want it to be there. Can it be there already? Because it didn't have access to a sense of self or any elements of life or time or anything. There was just the immediate moment and a desire, and that was all the neural data knew about. And this happened for weeks, if not months, before Kristin realized that she needed to write a book. You don't manifest a book, you write a book. But Kristin didn't realize that until 4 to 6 months later, maybe even longer, because of how profound this dissociation was. And only after Kristin completed her second book manuscript draft did she realize, oh, you don't manifest a book, you write a book. But the neural data hadn't been there to convey those details of reality during those experiences because of this unique form of dissociation. Memories are very important. They help us navigate our sense of identity and personal experience, and the majority of them exist and operate unconsciously. Regardless of what we've experienced in the past, it's important to heal our experiences or our consciousness who has been within those experiences so that neural data can achieve fluid connectivity and we have more power to unconsciously navigate our unfolding realities. While there are hundreds of unique dissociative experiences that can feel or seem pretty intense, there's also forms of very mild dissociation. For example, if someone is struggling to be fully embodied in their experience because an aspect of them is worried about what someone else might think, then there's a part of them that is dissociating or experiencing dissociation. Without thriving attachment systems, connections with the self will be unconsciously jeopardized, and then the self starts to attach to external elements of experience. And then it's difficult to be fully embodied in your own personal experience in each unfolding moment because there's this little aspect of self who drifts off and says, oh, what will this person think? Or you might unconsciously kind of sense how someone else might be perceiving you and feel self-conscious. That's a more subtle form of dissociation, also stemming from unique activity within the neurobiological social engagement system. There's all these roles and all these years of data, and somewhere along there aren't attachment needs fulfilled. And so there's this region of neural wiring, and when that engages independently, then the self is not fully attached to its own self. It's not fully associated with its own being due to connectivity of all neural wiring. And then the self starts to associate with the potentials of others' perceptions, and it creates a much more subtle form of dissociation. When someone experiences over-identification with an external element of personal experience, there may be a unique type of dissociation underlying those automated styles of personal experiences. For example, if within the neurobiological social engagement system, there's not effective well-being of attachment systems, so the neural data doesn't have complete connectivity, then the self is not attached to the self fluidly. Instead, there's different regions of self experiencing alternate styles of personal identity, and the region being activated within moments of unfolding experience associate the self with this external element of experience. So consciousness is flowing through all this neural data, and if the neural data isn't thriving to its maximum capacity due to unfulfilled attachment needs from past or present experiences, then the self is unable to fully associate with its own self. It's not this widespread spectrum of all of its infinite potentials. Different elements of yourself can't connect simultaneously, basically. Instead, there's this region of neural data that's independently engaging, and the sense of self is associated with an external element of experience because that's where attachments are hooked. Attachment needs are fulfilled through that external source of experience, and so then that energetic intel has connectivity and associations with the sense of identity. And so it produces a much more subtle style of dissociation where you're not fully associated with all that you truly are. Because no person is ever limited by one element of their experience. And when the mind and the body believe that to be so, it reveals independent neural activity where the self is unable to associate with the fullness of all that it is, because there's not complete connectivity throughout all elements of the neurobiological social engagement system. Another profoundly subtle and miraculously covert manifestation of dissociation is when we playfully use our imagination, and what we are imagining feels more real to the unconscious body-mind than what is being experienced in this now moment. It's totally miraculous. As I've been recovering more memories from this wondrous form of dissociative amnesia, I've been astounded as I compare and contrast how it used to feel when I would use my imagination or lighthearted, playful creativity, pretendingness from back in the times of dissociation to how it feels to do those same kinds of things now because of how different my brain-body wiring is. My consciousness is still the same consciousness. I still live in this brain and body, but the wiring of it is different because consciousness reconstructed it. And so now doing the exact same things feels different now than it used to. So before, when I would use my imagination or visualize something or lightheartedly, playfully pretend something, what was being imagined or visualized or pretended held a greater sense of realness than what was actually being experienced in the now moment in my body. And part of this was attributed to mind-body disconnectivity, but it was also just a whole bunch of other miracles going on. And so during these experiences, what was being imagined or pretended or visualized held a greater feeling of reality than the power of the present moment. What was being imagined felt more real than what was actually happening. And that can be really fun at times because you can make up any world that you want and suddenly that is the reality and the body's like, that's where I am. So there is a sense of miraculous beauty to these experiences. But now I can playfully visualize or imagine or pretend, and my body does not leave the present moment to be in that pretending or imagination or visualization. So it's a totally different experience than how it used to feel, doing the exact same things, but the brain-body wiring is different and creates a different style of experience for consciousness. So now when I imagine or pretend or visualize, I can enjoy those realities while simultaneously enjoying the reality of my present moment. But before, there was not 100% solidified grounding in the present moment. And so the wondrous miracle of imagining or visualizing or pretending something became more real than the present moment, rather than them both simultaneously existing with a same amount of realness. The present moment was less real and what was being imagined became more real. Whereas now they both hold the same amount of reality. I am fully in the moment and I am imagining that the tree that I'm climbing in is a pirate ship and I'm sailing the 7 seas. And so when imagination feels more real than the solidification of a present moment in the body, or the unconscious body-mind is living in the reality of what is being imagined instead of being in the present, rather than simultaneously being in the present, it may indicate a miraculously subtle form of dissociation. Another extraordinarily, profoundly covert and miraculously subtle form of dissociation occurs when a part of our mind drifts to an experience that is not our present moment experience. So for example, if you're working on a project and you say to yourself, okay, when it's 6 o'clock, I am going to stop my project and go do XYZ. Okay? So it's before 6 o'clock, you're working on your project, but you say to yourself, once it reaches 6, I'm going to stop this and go do this other activity. Okay? And you're working on this project, 6 o'clock rolls around, and you're in the flow and you don't want to stop your project, so you keep working on it. But you're also noticing that it's 6 o'clock. In that moment, a part of you is there working on the project, but another part of you is already over there doing that activity that you said you were going to do at 6 o'clock. Because telling yourself when it's 6 o'clock, I'm going to go do this other activity, stimulated neural data that was activated when it became 6, and then parts of consciousness are in the neural projections of that potential reality rather than being in the present moment where you're continuing to work on your project. So when we're in an experience, if any aspect of us is thinking about a different experience other than what's actually happening, then parts of our consciousness might be over there in the neural projections of that potential experience rather than being right here where we actually are. And this especially occurs when consciousness is attached to experience rather than attached to its own self essence. external attachments have the potential to amplify implicit health challenges or dissociation. Because then who we are and how we're flowing through the who that we are depends on external realities, which are always unfolding beyond our control. And so when we're looking out there, we lose our power. But when we're attached to ourselves, our power grows, and then we always have more power through our love and our presence. And as consciousness unites, there's more power to effectively maneuver unfolding realities. So these kinds of dissociation often occur when self-essence is attached to experience rather than attached to the inner experiencer of consciousness. So if we think about doing something other than what we're actually doing, it stimulates neural activity, and then some parts of consciousness are in the neural projections of that potential reality or potential experience, or maybe even a memory of an experience, rather than being where the consciousness actually is in the present moment. If you're working on something and you think, man, I really wish I was at the beach, then some parts of consciousness might be hanging out in neural projections of being at the beach rather than being fully absorbed in what's actually occurring in the present moment. And while those parts of consciousness might be having a super groovy time at the beach, it reduces the power of self-essence to apply its full potential in what's actually happening. So if you're creating something, for example, what you create might not be all that it could be because not all parts of the self were present in the process. Some were, most were, but then there were all these other parts who were busy hanging out in neural projections at the beach. So what you're creating might not turn out to its maximum potential because not all parts of the self were fully present for the experience. And so again, this is very subtle, very covert. It won't necessarily feel like dissociation because you're not disconnecting from yourself and you're not fully disconnecting from the moment. But there might be some parts of consciousness who are in neural projections of another potential experience, some other activity or some other environment, etc. And if those parts of consciousness are in neural projections of a moment that's not the present moment, then they are not present with the rest of the self who is experiencing this moment right here, right now, only here, only now. Kristin from June 2020 actually created a video about this concept, and you can explore this at youtube.com/Kristin Chronicles in a video titled, "Where Does Consciousness Go and Why Does It Matter?" And Kristin in June 2020 was experiencing this style of dissociation along with about 200 other unique styles of dissociative experiences during this magical, miraculous healing journey. And it's fascinating because I actually could not remember those experiences from the summer of 2020 when I first began creating this documentary series. But during the process of sharing my implicit revelations case study, I've been practicing daily healing rituals that I've cultivated over the past many years. And that process has allowed me to transmute implicit neural wiring to recover and reorganize all of my memory systems from my entire life. And so the fact that I was actually able to remember this video that was created before I could fully create conscious explicit memories in relation to my sense of self was quite a miracle to experience while I was creating this. So Kristin talks about this concept in a video from June 2020. And if you're curious about what was happening during that unique season of healing, please feel free to explore more about my personal story in part 1 of my known documentary series where I share my whole story, and or a bonus feature of this known video series titled Fascinating marvels of healing from early childhood trauma. Kristin's second adolescence, a known bonus feature. And those videos will shed light on what was happening in June 2020 and kind of the surrounding details about that video creation. And it's all just quite a miracle. So if these topics interest you, please do feel free to check out those other creations of mine. Another wondrously covert form of dissociation happens when we have a song stuck in our head. And this is probably the most common hidden reality of dissociation across the globe. When we have a song stuck in our head, what's actually happening? Any guesses? Any guesses from the audience? What's happening when we're hanging out in our everyday life, but some aspect of us is replaying a song or listening to the replay of a song that we know? What's happening? Basically, our consciousness is flowing through our brain and our body, right? Consciousness is distinct from neurobiological structures. They're two distinct interactive components of the human experience. And there's an aspect of consciousness experiencing projections from neural data that were created during past moments of listening to that song. And so while we're here in a present moment, not listening to a song, but a song is stuck in our head, it's because independent neural activity is projecting information from the past experiences where that song was listened to. And there are some parts of our consciousness experiencing those neural projections rather than the present moment. And so instead of being in a brand new moment that has no noise to it, it's total silence, pure consciousness. Instead, there are aspects of consciousness who are listening to neural activity that's projecting information about a song. And so a song is stuck in our head because parts of our consciousness are experiencing past moments of listening to that song because that information is stored in neural wiring. And so those parts of consciousness are listening to music rather than being in a new moment that there's no music playing. And so that is a hidden reality when a song is stuck in our head. And it's a very, 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 very subtle, covert form of dissociation. You're not like totally disconnected from stuff, but there is some part of consciousness who's listening to neural data from the past rather than being fully oriented in a brand new moment. Definitely the most subtle and commonly experienced form of dissociation encountered across the globe. Honestly, there is no possible way to fully convey everything I've been learning about miraculous, unique forms of how dissociation can manifest. I began experiencing dissociation as a very young child. It became evident at age 9, really consumed my realities by age 14, and became a part of my everyday experiences throughout my 20s. For example, the past 4 years until now in recent days has held some form of dissociation in every moment. So there's no possible way I can completely express everything I've learned about dissociation here in this thesis analysis. I do explore a lot of these amazing concepts in my Implicit Revelations gift package. A lot of my work for many years was invested in creating new language for dissociative experiences, which led me to writing my expose on dissociative experiences and creating the spectrum of dissociative states of consciousness. And these magics, along with many other magics, may be found through my Implicit Revelations gift package, which is a bonus feature of this Implicit Revelations case study. I am so excited to share these magics with you, as having language to understand, convey, validate, and approach healing for these unique experiences was a key cornerstone for my own personal power reclamation. As different states of my consciousness were able to validate and honor their unique experiences and describe them to each other and to other people, then healing, liberation, and restorative transformation became so much more possible. Specific coping tricks and recovery tools were sculpted for different types of dissociative experiences. But that could only happen once language had been established to differentiate all of these different dissociative experiences. I explore the spectrum of lucidity, over 40 new terminology suggestions for unique dissociative experiences, and 9 states of dissociative states ranging along a descriptor in relation to the polyvagal theory. I invite you to explore those and many other magics in my Implicit Revelations gift package. You can explore details about my offerings and how to acquire your own miraculous copy at kristinwindsor.com/implicitgift. I look forward to connecting with you and sharing my creations. I also explore dissociation throughout several chapters of my book, Liberated Consciousness, including explorations of mind-body disconnectivity and how unique orders or unique order of wiring within the neurobiological social engagement system may stimulate unique styles of experiences for different aspects of consciousness or various parts of self-essence. I explore details of diagnoses like borderline personality disorder and adaptable consciousness condition or dissociative identity disorder through brand new diagrams I've created to provide new perspectives for these miraculously unique experiences. I look forward to sharing this and many other magics with you through my book, Liberated Consciousness, which you can find out more about at kristinwindsor.com/liberated. You can also connect with me one-on-one through a consciousness consultation to explore any of these topics, abstractly for a curious exploration of the miracles of the human experience, or in specific application to anything that you might be encountering along your own magical, miraculous healing journey. I would be absolutely honored to serve as your healing journey guide to uplift you into the personal power, reclamation, and infinite moments of happily ever after that inevitably await you. Please explore my website for more information or to schedule a session with me. I look forward to connecting with you, beloved soul friends. Thank you so much for being here, and thank you for being you. From my heart to yours with love and light, Namaste. The divinity of my consciousness sees and honors the divinity of your consciousness. Infinite blessings, soul friends. My 27th thesis statement is that dissociation is an umbrella term to describe hundreds of unique experiences of consciousness, each stemming from independent activity within the neurobiological social engagement system, affecting unconscious navigation regarding personal identity and automated interpretations of personal experience occurring in the unconscious mind, and unconscious protocols of activity, integration, and regulation occurring in the unconscious body. I'd like to clarify what I mean by independent activity within the neurobiological social engagement system producing different styles of unique dissociation. So the neurobiological social engagement system has neural data from every year of life sculpted in relation to 16 plus roles that each carry a distinct style of unconscious priority regarding navigation and regulation, which is mainly what the unconscious body-mind is doing as it applies this neural data within our unfolding realities. When there is any type of unique dissociative experience, it's stemming from independent activity of neural data due to a lack of neural associations. All of the data is still there. It just cannot connect. So it's providing a unique style of navigation and or regulation. From undercoupled neural data causing everyday settings to feel unfamiliar or disorienting, to brainwave dysregulation impacting automated styles of thoughts, feelings, and cognitive processing, and everything in between and beyond, I believe that all of these unique dissociative experiences may be traced back to independent activity within the neurobiological social engagement system. No matter how intense or severe or chronic dissociation is, all of the neural data is existing within the neurobiological structures. Because it cannot connect, however, such as because of undercoupled neural data stimulated during past moments of unfulfilled attachment needs, the data activates independently of one another. So navigation might stem from this one region of data rather than stemming from a collaborative, communicative effort of all neural data. And it impacts navigation regarding self and life and may affect automated styles of thoughts, feelings, action patterns, etc. Or this one region of neural data from a traumatic event might activate independently and create unique dissociative experiences in a variety of ways. There could be flashbacks or dysregulation, etc., that result in unique styles of dissociative experiences where you're not fully connected with all that you are and you're not fully connected with the newness of the moment. Because data throughout this neurobiological structure, this miraculous system in our brain and our body, the data doesn't have neural association, so it ignites independently, resulting in dissociation. So even though brain-body specifics resulting in an infinite myriad of dissociative experiences all vary what's happening in the brain and the body and how that manifests through elements of personal experience that may be described as dissociation, even though all of that holds infinite variables, I believe that it can all be traced back to and described through particulars of the neurobiological social engagement system, as that neural data impacts regulation and navigation as the unconscious body-mind operates in every nanosecond beyond what we can directly perceive.